these are the 8 books about money that I think everyone should read. The first book that I want to talk about, I actually don't have a copy of. I've had many copies of it, but it's a book that I consistently give away to other people because it was so helpful to us. And I think that everyone should read this book just to get a base layer of knowledge about managing your money. Because this isn't something that's really taught in schools, and depending on how you were brought up, you may not have ever really been taught about how to handle money and things like that. So this book is The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. So Dave comes at money from a very specific point of view, and he's very much no nonsense. He doesn't want to hear your opinions about it. He just wants to tell you not to make mistakes that he made. He got into a lot of trouble when he was younger. He over leveraged himself in real estate and basically went bankrupt when he had, kids, and it was just a really difficult time. So after that happened to him, he never wanted that to happen to anyone else. So he is very much get out of debt, stay out of debt. He's anti-credit cards. He's very strict as far as what he recommends. He says, don't be Dave-ish, so when you read the book, you definitely get a sense of there's a clear right and wrong way to do this. The thing that I love about Dave Ramsey's system is that it does give you a clear path to, do this first, then do this, and then do this. And it's the baby step method. It just breaks things down into small, doable chunks. It's not that it's easy to do because it's really all about getting yourself to behave, but it's a great book to just start out with. The next book is a little bit controversial. This is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read it about 20 years ago. And even though this isn't a book that I reread, I do keep a copy around, and I don't even necessarily agree with everything that's in this book. But the thing about it is it helps you to see things in a different way. Like the one thing, if I could just pick out one thing that I learned from this book, that it just made me think differently about things, was that he points out that everybody thinks of your personal house as an asset. And an asset is something that brings you money. And your house is not that. Your house costs you money. So you shouldn't think of your house, your personal home, as an asset. And just that one little flip was helpful to me. So yeah, good book. Don't know about the guy himself though. Sometimes he's a little bit the end of the world's coming and then it doesn't happen. So now this little book is not one that I hear many people talk about at all. It's called How to Ruin Your Financial Life by Ben Stein. And I loved Ben Stein. I loved watching the show Win Ben Stein's Money. He's a smart guy. I think he taught at Harvard or something like that. But basically, he's super smart and he's really funny. And so this book is more written, you can see how small it is. The chapters are super short, a page long, maybe a page of these tiny pages. So it's a great book that, if you're just kind of intimidated by the whole process of money management, this is a great book to kind of get started with because it's all done tongue in cheek. I mean, the book is called How to Ruin Your Financial Life. And that's his whole point. Follow this advice and you're going to end up broke. I love some of the titles Know with a certainty that there will never be any rainy days in your life. Or chapter 6, spend as much as you want and don't be afraid to go into debt. Chapter 8, compete with your friends to see who can spend the most. Chapter 16, repeat after me. I am not responsible for my financial well-being. So great book. I keep it around. I like to just flip through it from time to time. The Millionaire Next Door. So this book is great because you may think you know how wealthy people live. And well, okay, first of all, I'm not a millionaire, so I don't know how they live. But I do know that these people in this book actually researched and talked to people, interviewed a lot of millionaires to kind of get a sense of what do these people buy, what do they not buy, and how do they behave with money. And the cool thing about this book is it kind of breaks it down into 2 separate types of what we would think of as rich people. And so you have on one side, people who are actually wealthy. And then on the other side, you have people who they just earn a high income. So generally speaking, the people who are just earning a high income, that they're just living paycheck to paycheck. That's not all people who are earning a high income. It's just there's a subsection of what we would call rich, and that's how they're categorized. And the other side is people who are on all different parts of the income spectrum, but who are amassing wealth. And so it's neat because this book shows you that so many things that we think of when we think rich person, people who are actually becoming wealthy, meaning they're holding on to their money, they're not doing these things. They're not buying fancy cars. They're buying used cars. So a lot of times you might be surprised at how these people live. You kind of think, oh, if you're rich, then you finally get to buy all the nice cars and it's, brand new cars all the time. But these people are not like that. They're just kind of like regular people who buy regular things and maybe less of the things that we would normally buy, even if you're not earning a great income. And so yeah, it's a great book just to kind of reset your expectations if you want to build wealth. Now, this is a book that I came across in 2015, and it's called Early Retirement Extreme by Jacob Lund Fisker. And the subtitle is A Philosophical and Practical Guide to Financial Independence. So this book was really interesting to me because I had not really thought of the idea of becoming financially independent. So there's a difference between like actually just being, rich, but then you still have to continue to work. But this idea is more like just figure out how to amass enough money so that basically you are able to just do what you want, and your investments and things like that are passively coming in, and that's how you're earning money. And so now I'm not financially independent, but one thing that continues to stand out in my brain is that he talks about habit webs, kind of like, in other words, trying to make your daily life so that you are in these habits that are supporting the idea that you will one day become financially independent. So in other words, having hobbies that also double as things that could make you money so that you are increasing the amount of money you have. At the same time, doing things that will help you save money that could also be a hobby and yet save you money. So for example, like if you learn how to bike around and not have to rely on having a car, which is not always practical depending on where you live in the country. Like if you live in a rural area, sorry, you need a car. But there are things that you can think about, like when you're even thinking about where you're going to live, you can think about all those different things when you're making those decisions. It's a book about extremes, though. It's not exactly practical, but it does help you to think more creatively about like, how could I, do things differently so that maybe I don't need as much money in order to get to that goal sooner. Now, this guy does have a degree, a PhD in theoretical physics. And so there are parts of this book that are just over my head. I'll freely admit it. Where is it? Let's see here. Like, for example, you see all these, like there are these charts and stuff. And here's one of the equations that he puts down. It's like m equals log, and in the parentheses, 1 plus I times p to the 0 over p. It's a lot of stuff that I don't understand, but I do understand that he knows what he's talking about. So, but it is a great book. Like, even though there is some stuff that is just over the head, there's a lot of good stuff too that is just very simple to understand, maybe hard to implement, but good if you do implement it. Now, this book I learned about because I read Early Retirement Extreme, and then over time I heard more about financial independence, retire early, that whole movement, the FIRE movement. I heard this book get recommended a lot. It's called Your Money or Your Life, and it's by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin. So this book, the thing that's unique about it is telling you to really think about your life in terms of, think about how much of your time you're going to have to spend to earn the money that you're going to need to then use to buy things. And so, in other words, instead of looking at like a meal out as, $50, thinking in terms of how much do you earn per hour, And so you're going to have to, if you earn, let's say $20 an hour, you're going to have to spend, almost 2.5 hours working to get that meal. And so then is it worth it? That's not to say that it's not worth it, but it just kind of flips your paradigm and makes you think about things a little bit differently. And it certainly did for me. Now, one exercise that I did not do that would probably really be a good thing to do. And even though I read this book many years ago, I keep thinking I'm going to do that exercise and I just haven't yet. But they recommend writing down every single thing that you buy, every cent that you spend, every day of the month, like keeping a running total and being that specific with your money. And that way you can really see in black and white just how much you're spending. Even if you're, tracking your spending, which I do that, you still, like you're kind of lumping it all together. I sit down maybe once a week to do that. And I do think that a daily practice of really, making notes of here's what I spent and here's what I spent it on, it would probably make me think twice about some of the things I spend money on. And it's got some practical advice too about just, once you realize that, okay, my time is, I have to think about my time in relation to money. It gives some good tips about thinking about that. Like how do you then, like right now, maybe you're in a job that is really low paying, like how can you increase your income? Like how can you decrease your expenses, but also how can you increase your income so that you can work fewer hours and enjoy your life more and give back, like through things like volunteer your time and just have more time with the people you love. So really good book. Now, going back to books that are difficult to understand. The next one on the list is Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. So this book is great. It talking about, flipping paradigms and like things you think about in one way, like preparing for the worst, for example. He kind of takes it a step further and he says, no, you should like have a plan in place so that the worse things get, the better off you are. And he just has a really interesting way of looking at things. He had an interesting kind of life. He has lived through, like civil unrest in I think it was Lebanon. That's where he lived for a period of time. But it's just an interesting idea. Like he talks about, for example, who has a more anti-fragile existence or who has a more fragile existence, like some banker, like who is like highly skilled, or a taxi driver. Well, the taxi driver has all these different clients. And so his job isn't very fragile. He has a lot of different clients. He knows the city well. He has made a lot of contacts. Whereas the person, who's a banker, they, if one bad thing happens, they could be just out of luck. Like their job is gone and it's hard to find another job that would replace that kind of income. That being said, this book, and actually there are a few other books by him that I loved. Fooled by Randomness. This is one I've heard recommended over and over and over again, and it is really good. And The Black Swan. Black Swans is a neat one too because it kind of, they all make you think differently about everything, about the role of just luck. Like Fooled by Randomness is really helpful because sometimes, like you can be doing what you feel like is just the right thing with money, and then just random things happen, and it's like you really can't prepare for them, and it's not really your fault. Like, a couple of years ago, my husband and I both were in car accidents within just a few months of each other. Was not our fault, but yet it like was a hit to our finances because of, the car getting totaled and stuff like that. It's nice to read a book like this because it really does show like you can do the right things, but we're all subject to risk and a bit of, just luck. And that's just the way things go. There are some sentences that are kind of complex, like enforcing consciousness of generalized iatrogenics is a tall order. The very notion of iatrogenics is quite absent from the discourse outside medicine, which, to repeat, has been a rather slow learner. But just as with the color blue, having a word for something helps spread awareness of it. So it can be a bit dense, I would say. Like, it's really good, but it's helpful also if you know a lot of mythology. And if you don't know a lot of mythology, and sometimes there's, foreign language in here, you kind of have to do a bit of Googling, which can be a bit it can just kind of interrupt the reading experiences. That being said, I still do love these books. I keep them around because I feel like I need to kind of read them maybe like 3 or 4 times through just to really understand what he's saying. And the last book is The Psychology of Money. This is a relatively new book, and I really like this book. I just finished reading it. And the thing that I really liked about this book is it kind of like put everything together a little bit. It is not a how-to. Like not a guide on how to manage your money, how to make a budget, that kind of a thing. This is more of an exploration of why do we do what we do with money? And it's nice because it kind of touches on a lot of the themes in these other books, but it puts it all together in one place. He actually does talk about Nassim Taleb's books in this book a lot, especially Fooled by Randomness, but still, it's a good read. And I think the best take-home point from this book is that it really points out, like, what's the whole point of learning how to deal with your money well? And it's because, and I agree with this point, and this is his opinion, that money, when you control your money and you learn how to save it, and you learn how not to go into debt, and you learn how to be content with less, you gain freedom. The more you can be frugal and just intentional with your money, the more freedom you get. And the more freedom you get, the happier you get. When you have more time with your family, when you feel like you can, take time off work if you need to. Those things are what it's really all about. It's not about having more stuff. It's about learning how to control your money so that you can live your best life possible. So there you have it. Those are the books that have definitely helped me. Like I said, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not even, I don't think, what most people would call wealthy, but those books have helped me to get out of debt and to stay out of debt, or to quickly get back out of debt if, like one time we bought a new car, even after we had gone through Dave Ramsey's class and we knew not to go into debt, but we did it anyway. And that was because we kind of felt like we deserved it, but we did pay it off quickly when we kind of realized the error of our ways. And since then we have not gone back into debt except for to buy our house. I would like to know in the comment section if there are books that I missed, that there are books that it's like, how could you not have said like this particular book? Because obviously it's amazing. Maybe I've never heard of it. I'm always looking for really good books to read. So leave it in the comment section below.